most any topwater I'm going to throw this time of the year is going to be a bait fish color. I don't throw a black frog a lot this time of the year, even if the water is fairly clean, just given the fact that I think those bass are largely starting to feed, to transition over to feeding on shad again. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Technique of the Month video. And this month for May, man, it's all about topwater. You know, if you ask me what month of the year is topwater the most effective, I would definitely say May. Just generally speaking, across the country, you know, top to bottom, May is a great month for fishing topwater. I think May is such a good month for topwater fishing because you've got several different things going on. You've got a lot of bass that are finishing up spawning. You know, maybe there are still a few, left spawning, garden fry. You've probably got a shad spawn happening, getting started, middle of it, lingering, whatever it may be. You've got some of that going on. If your lake has herring spawn, like there's just a lot of reasons for bass to be feeding up near the surface. It's warming up. So there's a lot of things going on in May that lend themselves really, really well to topwater fishing. And that goes anywhere from, from a frog to walking baits, to wake baits, to buzz baits, to, plopper style stuff. Like there's a lot of different topwaters that you can be effective with this time of the year. And a lot of that just has to do with where those fish are at, what type of cover is in your lake. On Douglas Lake, for example, there's places in May where you need to be throwing a hollow-bodied frog because it's so much cover, there's flooded stuff, it's vegetation, it's grass. And then there's places, maybe in the middle part of the lake where a buzzbait would be better. And then down the lake where you've got clear water, maybe more smallmouth, you need to be throwing a walking bait. So it really just varies on the type of cover and the way those fish are set up as to which topwater bait is going to be most effective for you this time of the year on the fishery that you're fishing. And that's a pretty good synopsis of it right there, really, really quick. That's a lot of that overhanging, really thick cover, that kind of stuff, or places where you've got some mats, some little thin blowed up mats or something like that. Obviously, that's where you're going to want to fish a frog. Something that you're able to fish in those areas where you need your bait to be weedless. That's where a frog is really going to shine. And most any topwater I'm going to throw this time of the year is going to be a bait fish color. It's going to be a white, some version of a white one. I don't throw a black frog a lot this time of the year, even if the water is fairly clean. It's probably going to be maybe a bluegill color, but probably a shad type pattern for a frog for me to be throwing this time of the year, just given the fact that I think those bass are largely starting to feed, to transition over to feeding on shad again. The one kind of, I feel like, outlier as to where a frog would work really well is overhanging bushes. I think of like river cut banks and places like that where you've just got some vines and you got some overhanging bushes. Skipping that frog up under that kind of stuff, that's not your most traditional frog fishing kind of thing like it is in grass or, some type of surface cover. But that overhanging trees, man, skipping a frog up under that stuff where it goes back there out of sight, twitch it a couple times and you get that whoosh that's somewhere back in there you can't even see. It's a pretty fun way to catch them for sure. For me, then kind of switching gears, the buzz bait. I think in most of my buzz bait fishing right now, it's probably going to be either riprap oriented or boat dock oriented, especially around floating docks where there is some shad spawn going on. Riprap, seawalls, boat docks. For me, that's going to be a lot of where I'm throwing a buzz bait this time of the year. Again, that's largely those areas where I'm expecting there to be some type of presence of shad spawn going on. And a buzz bait is something that I can fish fast, obviously, and I can skip, and I can just be very, very efficient with it. So I can come, be going down the line of riprap, get right up there close, I can buzz down through there, come out to a boat dock, skip it under a boat dock, make 2 or 3 good casts with it there, and then keep on trucking. That's what I like about a buzz bait, is that I'm able to literally just cover water with it. Frog is generally a little bit more target oriented. Buzz bait, it's just about going for the most part. The big thing with the buzz bait is truly your casting angle. So often, making that parallel cast down the side of a seawall or down the edge of the riprap and keeping your bait, this close to it. that's where your strike zone is. That's what's really important. Making a skip down the side of a boat dock or up under a boat dock and bumping that buzzbait into those floats, that's where your strike zone's at. If you skip it under there, just like that far under the dock, and then you reel it straight out away from it, you ain't in the strike zone very long. Bringing it down the edge of those things. When you're fishing a buzzbait, think of, really making that bait run parallel or running into whatever the cover it is that you're fishing around at that point in time. So that's a big thing with it. Last up would be the walking bait, and you could really put wake baits into this same category. With this, I do throw a wake bait a decent amount in May when those fish are postponed. But walking baits, wake baits, that type of stuff, that for me is the more open water type applications. Places where maybe it's a shallow hump that's coming up, out in the middle of the lake that's a foot, 3 foot, 5 foot deep on top. It's a shallow point extending out into the lake. Those type of places where it's much more open water. Not that I won't throw this around a boat dock or down a riprap bank or something like that, but this is it's kind of more structure fishing almost, you would say. It's fish that are out on a point, they're on a bar, they're on that shallow hump, and you're really trying to call them up. And oftentimes what you're going to have going on, you're going to have a wolf pack of fish that are on these places. It may be a group of 2 or 3, it may be a group of 5 or 10. But you're going to have little groups of fish that are out there, and there could be some bait fish spawn going on these places. You especially see that, I think, on herring lakes, but you do see it some on shad lakes as well, where those shad are, out spawning on something that's out there under the water. Could be just some hard bottom, could be a little bit of submerged grass or something, and it could be stuff that flooded up, as the water came up, or it could be, hydrilla or something like that starting to sprout up as well. But you will see that occasion where those fish are on some bait fish spawning, but you're really not seeing them because it's not on the surface where they're up there flipping around and that kind of thing. So it can be a little bit harder to find. But what you'll oftentimes find with that is there'll be a very specific part of that point, of that hump, of that bar, whatever it is, where those fish are. And even though you're throwing a topwater, it's like if you throw 20 foot that way, or you throw 20 foot that way, you don't get anything. But you throw in this little 5 to 10 foot zone right here, and that's where you're likely to get a bite. And you can oftentimes come back to that place and catch multiple fish. That scenario, any of these, you absolutely want to have a follow-up bait, a wacky worm or a little lightweight Texas or shaky head or something. But that particular scenario you especially do, because you're going to, again, there's probably going to be a little group of fish there that you'll catch 1 or 2 active ones on the top water, but you can throw a shaky head or something else back in there and pick up another 1 or 2 of them. But yeah, top water, the month of May, pick the right bait for the application, for where those fish are at, if they're in heavy cover, if they're, along the banks or along boat docks or something like that, or if they're out on a point. But picking the right top water for that application this time of the year is definitely a good way to catch a lot of fish and to catch some big ones.